it was a
He
myth?
basically said there is
no medical link.
There is no medical link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I kind of took it as like, well, no medical link yet, but like the people who have an abortion tend to not be so open about it, and they're not going to admit that they regret it because like we're, like you said, primed to think like, it's my right, it's my, and like, so
well,
they're...
I'll give you a good example. I do think, there's a lot you can do. They talk about denial, the rule of denial.
Right.
You can get a lot of information about that. Mm-hmm. They recognize how big a factor that is in every other area of dealing with psychological trauma except abortion.
Right, like even for death, any kind of death, like a death of a family member.
I have a question. Do you think that, the stages of grieving, it's, there's like those 7 stages or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's kind of the same for abortion?
Absolutely appropriate. Okay. Because what do they talk about the first stage of
denial?
Denial. I had 4 years of denial, until I finally accepted. I finally understood what I had done, and despair. If you look through that stages of grief, it's very appropriate to apply that to abortion.
Oh yeah,
very appropriate.
So during the time of your suicidal thoughts, were you did you have a partner at that time, or were you in Europe? Or?
I had a strategy for trying to get well from my abortion. I was going to fix it myself. I've never been the kind of girl that couldn't handle anything. I was able to fix everything. I was at the top of my class. I had a scholarship to Duke University. I had an invitation to model in New York. It was just whatever I wanted, I was able to achieve. And so I thought, I want to get well from the abortion. I can fix this. And I had a strategy for doing it. First strategy was break up with the boyfriend because I thought, I can't forget what we did. This dark thing is always between us. So I'm just going to start over fresh. How many people would think that would work? I moved to another country, to accomplish this. I thought to myself, I know what I need to do. I need to be able to accomplish things that I would never have been able to do if I had the baby. I need to be able to model, and I need to travel around the world. I need to do things that I couldn't have done if I was saddled with a child. But I accomplished all of those things, but it didn't fix what was wrong with me. I know what I need to do. I need to get married and have a baby to replace the baby that I lost. If I can be a mother and love my second baby the way I should have loved my first one, I'll be able to get well. So I got married. But guess what? That's when I found out I had the infertility. And I had 10 years of infertility. And it took 5 surgeries to fix all the damage that they had done to my body. I didn't know that any of that had happened. I didn't know until I tried to get pregnant. But I think it was that I was out of solutions. I had tried everything I could think of, and now the last thing that I thought might fix it was denied to me, and it was over. I was out of ways out of this, except for committing suicide. And when I hit rock bottom, I despaired, and it was such an impulsive thing. You think that people. And maybe some people who commit suicide do really plan things out. But for many of them, it's just very, very impulsive. They reach a moment of complete despair. They hit rock bottom. Maybe they're drinking or using some form of drugs. And the thought comes to them along with the will, and everything lines up, and they do it. They say that most people never even leave a letter. That they don't even leave.
So how did you stop yourself from committing suicide?
You know what? That's a spiritual thing. I didn't stop myself. God stopped me. And I wish I understood. I pray about this a lot because I consider a very great favor that God stopped me when He did. But my impulse was to slit my wrist. And we had just gotten married, and we had a really sharp set of knives that we had just gotten for a wedding gift. And I grabbed one of those knives, and I slid down the wall. I was just weeping uncontrollably. And I remember how I was thinking. I didn't think of my parents finding my body. I didn't think of my husband finding my body. I didn't think of what would happen to my soul after I committed suicide. All I thought is that I'm so tired of carrying this burden, and I want the pain to be over. And death seemed like bliss. It seemed like nothingness, and I was ready to step into it. And my determination was to make as deep a cut as I could so that I wouldn't have to do it twice. And so I was really intending to do it hard. And as I went to make the movement across my wrist, I believe it was my guardian angel. I know it's hard to explain things like that to people who haven't had this experience, but I literally felt a physical presence wrap its arms around me and stop me, literally held my hand. And I heard...
I just got goosebumps.
Gives me goosebumps. Got goosebumps just telling the story. But I heard a voice that it was the most incredibly beautiful voice I've ever heard, ever. It was a male voice. It resonated, and I could feel it inside of my chest, like when you stand too close to a stereo, I could just feel it inside of me. I could hear it outside of me. And this voice just whispered in my ear. He said, "You have tried everything your way, but you haven't tried things God's way." And I thought, that's true. That's the one thing I haven't tried. I couldn't think of anything else to try. And I remember at that moment thinking, but I know what God wants for me. And that looks like, how would that make me happy? It doesn't look like it would even be fun. How could that make me happy? But I thought, I haven't tried it. And interiorly, I just decided to make this turn back toward God. And I realized I was turned completely away from Him, and I decided to turn back to Him in that moment. And when I did, interiorly, I just made this slight turn, and I felt God just rush out to meet me. He just, that story of the prodigal son? Mm-hmm. You don't want to be in church on a Sunday when they read that, because I bawl like a baby, because I felt that. I felt Him. He was watching for me to make the slightest turn back to Him, and He rushed out to meet me. It was the most incredible thing, and He spoke to me. He said, "I'm going to show you the first time that you walked away from me." And I thought, He's going to show me when I was getting involved in this sexual relationship with my boyfriend. But He didn't. He actually took me back. I saw my whole life like a movie, and He showed me a time when I was about 11 years old, and I had a girlfriend, same age, about 12, and she suddenly that year became very wild. She started drinking. She started, partying with the boys, and I was just such a good girl at 11, 12 years old. And I remember looking at her thinking, she looks like she's having a lot more fun than I am. And I thought, I don't want to be really bad. I thought maybe I can just be a little bad and it'll be okay. And so that was my determination to start stepping into testing how far could I go before I would get myself in trouble. And it was the beginning of this incredibly quick slide right to the bottom. As it was, you look at that from 12 to 18, only 6 years later, I killed my baby. I mean, what a fast slide, from somebody who said they just want to be a little bad, to just being completely out of control. And my life was completely out of control. And I think that's the real myth of our culture. You talk about the myth of suicide after abortion, or the myth of post-traumatic stress. The myth is that this, the way that we live out our sexuality is actually empowering for women. It's not. You want to watch your life spiral out of control fast, you step into that. You step into living out your sexuality the way that the world says to do it. It's the way to end up with STDs, the ways to end up with an infertility, the way to end up with an abortion, with mental health issues, the way to watch all of your dreams, everything that you so carefully laid out for yourself, just, be taken apart. And I think that's the myth,
Yeah,